U.S. authorities have arrested a man suspected of planting pipe bombs in Washington the night before the January 6, 2021 assault on the Capitol by supporters of President Donald Trump. The FBI released surveillance video, offered a $500,000 reward, and received hundreds of tips in a years-long search for the suspect they believe was involved in the incident that took place nearly 5 years ago. The footage, from January 5, 2021, showed a person putting a bomb near a bench outside the Democratic National Committee building. The suspect placed another bomb at the Republican headquarters. Both sites are near the Capitol. The suspect was in Virginia when he was arrested, according to a law enforcement official. "We have him," a Justice Department official told the media. He is expected to make an initial court appearance in Washington, according to a source briefed on the matter. The bombs were discovered on the same day supporters of Trump stormed Congress in an attempt to stop lawmakers from certifying Democrat Joe Biden's 2020 presidential election victory. Police deactivated the bombs and neither exploded. At the House Homeland Security Committee hearing, Representative Benny Thompson slammed Republicans about January 6th and the treatment of Capitol Police officers.
Listen up, folks. John speaking, everything just changed. The FBI has solved the January 6th pipe bomb mystery, and the answer is upending Trump's narrative about the Capitol attack. The development marks a long-dreaded moment for his political operation. For almost half a decade, the pipe bomb case has been an unsolved puzzle that conspiracy theorists have exploited mercilessly. Nobody knew who planted those functional explosive devices outside the Democratic and Republican National Committee headquarters. Nobody knew why they were placed there. And in the absence of answers, Trump and his allies have been spinning elaborate theories. Maybe it was a false flag operation designed to make Trump supporters look bad. Maybe it was Antifa, the shadowy left-wing group that has become a boogeyman in MAGA circles.
Recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for his opening statement.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and I welcome also our witnesses to this hearing. I also want to welcome our newest Democratic member to the committee, Representative James Walkinshaw of Virginia's 11th District. Mr. Walkinshaw is serving on the committee's cybersecurity and border security subcommittees, and we look forward to his contributions to the committee's work. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I want to begin by offering my condolences in the wake of the tragic shooting of Specialist Sarah Beckstrom and Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf in the nation's capital last week. Our thoughts and the thoughts of all Americans continue to be with the families as they mourn Sarah's loss and pray for Andrew's recovery. Gun violence is a scourge of our country, and violence against troops and law enforcement officers is reprehensible. All Americans must condemn this violence, and the perpetrator must be held accountable.
Maybe it was anyone except a Trump supporter. Anything to deflect from the uncomfortable possibility that someone from Trump's own base might have been responsible. Well, now we know who did it. And the truth is far more devastating for Trump than any conspiracy theory could have imagined. The FBI arrested Brian Cole in early December 2025, and once in custody, he did something that would send shockwaves through the political establishment. He confessed. He sat down with investigators for over 4 hours and told them everything. He admitted that he planted functional pipe bombs near both party headquarters in the evening hours of January 5th, 2021. He described how he moved through the neighborhood undetected, placing the devices that could have killed or maimed anyone unfortunate enough to be nearby when they detonated. And then he explained his motivations, which is where the story takes its most devastating turn. Brian Cole is a pro-Trump supporter who believed with absolute conviction that the 2020 election was stolen.
With that in mind, I appreciate Chairman Garbarino's holding today's hearing. Not only is this his first full committee hearing as chairman, but it's also the committee's first hearing in 4.5 months after the former chairman left Congress. Republicans shut down the government, and the Speaker sent the House home. It's past time for the committees to get back to work. It's my understanding that next week, we will have Secretary Kristi Noem before us at our annual worldwide threat hearing, and that too is also long overdue. Never in the history of the committee has the Secretary of Homeland Security hidden from congressional oversight like she has, aided by a Republican majority that refuses to hold the Trump administration accountable. Secretary Noem has a lot to answer for, particularly about how she's using masked officers to terrorize communities, including American citizens, children, pregnant women, and seniors.
He told investigators he was deeply disappointed that Trump lost. He expressed the exact same election fraud beliefs that Trump has been pushing for years, the same claims that have been repeatedly debunked by courts, election officials, and Trump's own Justice Department. The pipe bomber was not Antifa. He was not a false flag operative. He was a member of Trump's own base who was so radicalized by election lies that he planted bombs near both party headquarters the night before the Capitol attack. Let me explain why this is so devastating for Trump. Because the irony here is almost too much to handle.
Putting law enforcement officers and the public at risk. We look forward to her appearance next week. As for today's hearing, I'm pleased that Republicans want to address violence against police officers, but quite frankly, I just can't get over their hypocrisy. Republicans have spent the last 5 years defending the armed mob that attacked police officers at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. They demanded pardons for the perpetrators and cheered when President Trump issued them. Republicans don't care that pardoning people who threaten and attack officers would encourage others to do the same. They did it anyway. Many Republicans voted to put this plaque, staff were displaying the poster, in the Capitol honoring the service and sacrifice of law enforcement on January 6th, but have since been silent on their leadership, still refusing to hang the plaque for fear of angering President Trump.
Trump's own administration solved this case. His hand-picked FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino prioritized this investigation. Attorney General Pam Bondi went out and held a press conference hailing this as a big win for the Trump administration, finally cracking a cold case that had gone unsolved for years. They wanted to take credit. They wanted to show that putting MAGA loyalists in charge of law enforcement was producing outcomes. They wanted to demonstrate that their approach to justice was superior to what had come before. And then, in a twist that seems almost too perfect to be real, it turned out that the suspect they caught was a Trump supporter who believed Trump's election lies. The administration was trying to take a victory lap.
Republicans care more about being in President Trump's good graces than they do about honoring officers who put their lives on the line to protect the Capitol on January 6th. Today, we're grateful to have one of those heroes, Officer Daniel Hodge, with us. His testimony to this committee and his prior testimony before the committee on January 6th attack, which I was honored to chair, is as insightful as it is powerful. Officer Hodges responded to the Capitol on January 6th, where he and his fellow officers were beaten, tased, and crushed by an armed mob that wanted to block the peaceful transfer of presidential power. I asked the clerk to play a video showing just a few moments of Officer Hodges and his fellow officers under attack at the Capitol on January 6th. Please be advised that the video contains strong language.
And instead, they face-planted directly into evidence that Trump's own rhetoric may have inspired domestic terrorism. You cannot make this up. Trump's FBI solved the case. Trump's Justice Department announced the arrest. And Trump's own supporters are now asking uncomfortable questions about why the pipe bomber sounds exactly like them. The details of Brian Cole's confession are remarkable and deeply troubling. He told investigators that he held anarchist views, a surprising admission from someone who was also a fervent Trump supporter. He said he was disappointed that Trump lost the 2020 election. He expressed beliefs about election fraud, the same conspiracy theories that Trump has been pushing since before the votes were even counted. He planted the bombs undetected on the evening of January 5th, while security was supposedly heightened because of the planned January 6th rally. He placed functional explosive devices near the headquarters of both political parties, devices that could have killed or maimed anyone who happened to be nearby when they went off. And he did all of this because he had been radicalized by the same lies that Trump has been telling for years. The election was stolen, the system is corrupt, drastic action is necessary. Brian Cole took those lies seriously, and he planted bombs. The cognitive dissonance inside the Trump administration must be overwhelming. Here is a president who has spent years claiming that January 6th was peaceful, that his supporters are patriots who would never engage in violence, that any suggestion of Trump-inspired terrorism is a hoax or a false flag. And now his own FBI has arrested a man who confessed to planting pipe bombs while explicitly stating that he believed Trump's election lies. This is not a Democrat making accusations. This is not a liberal media narrative. This is a confession obtained by Trump's own Justice Department under Trump's own FBI director. The evidence comes from Trump's own people, and it proves that the rhetoric Trump has been pushing, the stolen election claims, the calls for desperate action, the suggestions that American democracy was being destroyed, that rhetoric inspired at least one person to plant bombs. How many others were radicalized the same way? How many other acts of violence were motivated by the same lies? Trump cannot run from this one. Trump, his own administration caught the guy. His own Justice Department is prosecuting him. And the suspect's own words tie him directly to Trump's political movement. The pipe bomb case has been one of the enduring mysteries of January 6th. On the evening of January 5th, 2021, the night before the attack on the Capitol, someone placed pipe bombs near the headquarters of both the Democratic National Committee and the Republican National Committee. The bombs were discovered the next morning as the Capitol attack was unfolding. They were functional explosive devices, not props or fakes, but real bombs capable of causing serious harm. The discovery of the bombs actually diverted law enforcement resources during the Capitol attack. Police had to respond to the bomb threats at the same time they were trying to protect the Capitol. For years, investigators had surveillance footage of the suspect, but could not identify who it was. The case went cold, and in the absence of answers, conspiracy theories flourished. Trump and his allies loved to speculate about the pipe bomber. They suggested it might have been a false flag, someone trying to make Trump supporters look bad. They floated theories that it was Antifa or some other left-wing group. They pointed to the unsolved nature of the case as evidence that the FBI was not really trying to find the culprit. Maybe because the answer would embarrass Democrats or reveal something they wanted hidden. The mystery of the pipe bomber became part of the broader January 6th conspiracy narrative. Another piece of supposed evidence that the official story was wrong and that Trump supporters were being unfairly blamed for violence they did not commit. Well, now we have answers. And the answers are devastating for that narrative. Brian Cole was arrested after the FBI tracked him down through investigative work that Trump's own appointees oversaw. He was brought in for questioning, and over the course of more than 4 hours, he confessed to everything. He admitted that he planted the pipe bombs. He described how he did it, placing the devices near both party headquarters between 7:30 and 8:30 p.m. on January 5th. He explained his motivations, and his motivations are exactly what Trump's critics have been saying all along. Cole told investigators that he was disappointed Trump lost the 2020 election. He expressed beliefs about election fraud, the same baseless claims that Trump has been pushing since November 2020. He described himself as holding anarchist views. He was a pro-Trump supporter who had been radicalized by the stolen election narrative to the point where he believed planting bombs was an appropriate response. The FBI has now confirmed all of this. The confession is on record. The details have been released to the public. And there is no way to spin this as anything other than what it is. A Trump supporter motivated by Trump's election lies planted bombs on the eve of January 6th. This was not Antifa. This was not a false flag. This was someone from Trump's own base doing exactly what Trump's critics have always worried about, taking the violent rhetoric seriously and acting on it. Attorney General Pam Bondi tried to spin this as a win for the Trump administration. She held a press conference praising the new FBI leadership under Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. She said they had prioritized this cold case and finally brought it to resolution. She wanted credit for solving a mystery that had gone unsolved during the Biden years. And from a pure law enforcement perspective, she has a point. The case was solved. A dangerous person was arrested. Justice is being served. But the political messaging completely backfired, because you cannot brag about catching the pipe bomber while also trying to hide the fact that the pipe bomber was a Trump supporter. The details came out. Cole's pro-Trump statements became public. His election fraud beliefs were reported in the press. And suddenly, the victory lap became an embarrassment. Trump is reportedly furious about how this has played out. He wanted the FBI to solve cases that made him look good, not cases that reinforce the narrative that his movement has inspired domestic terrorism. He wanted to be able to point to successes that vindicated his claims about January 6th, not arrests that proved his critics right. And now his own administration has handed his opponents one of the most powerful pieces of evidence they could ask for. A confession from a Trump supporter motivated by Trump's lies, admitting to planting bombs. It does not get more damaging than that. The timing of this arrest is also significant. We are heading into critical midterm elections. The question of political violence and who is responsible for it is going to be a major issue. Democrats have been arguing for years that Trump's rhetoric is dangerous and that his lies about the election have radicalized people to commit violence. Republicans have been dismissing those claims as partisan attacks. But now there is a confession. There is a specific person who planted specific bombs and who specifically cited Trump's election lies as part of his motivation. That is not a talking point. That is evidence, and it is going to be used in campaign ads and congressional hearings and media coverage from now until Election Day. The connection to broader January 6th accountability is also important. Trump has pardoned the January 6th rioters. He has called them patriots and hostages. He has tried to rewrite history to make the Capitol attack seem like a peaceful protest that was unfairly characterized by the media. But the pipe bombs are harder to explain away. These were not people walking through the Capitol taking selfies. These were explosive devices planted near buildings where people work. This was terrorism by any reasonable definition. And now we know it was terrorism committed by a Trump supporter. The pardon strategy does not work here. Trump cannot pardon Brian Cole and call him a patriot without explicitly endorsing domestic terrorism. The arrest has created a situation where the ugliest aspects of January 6th are back in the news. And this time, Trump's own FBI is the source of the damaging information. Major outlets have noted the contradiction in how the Trump administration is handling this. They want to play up the arrest as a law enforcement success, but they do not want to talk about the suspect's pro-Trump views. They want credit for solving the case, but they want to downplay what the case actually reveals about their movement. That is an impossible needle to thread. You cannot brag about catching the pipe bomber while also pretending that the pipe bomber was not one of your own supporters. The facts are the facts. Cole confessed. He stated his beliefs. He connected his actions to the stolen election narrative. And that information is now public, regardless of how much Trump wishes it were not. The Los Angeles Times and other outlets have been covering this with the kind of incredulity that only comes when reality surpasses satire. The Trump administration wanted to demonstrate that their law enforcement appointees were competent and effective. They wanted to show that they could solve cases that had stumped the previous administration. And they did exactly that. They solved the case. They caught the suspect. They obtained a confession. And that confession proves that the pipe bomber was a MAGA true believer who acted on Trump's lies. The response from Trump world has been a study in cognitive dissonance. On one hand, They cannot deny the arrest or the confession. It's all public record. On the other hand, they desperately want to distance themselves from the implications. They've tried to suggest that Cole's beliefs were somehow separate from Trump's rhetoric, as if the stolen election narrative exists in a vacuum, independent of the man who has been its primary promoter for half a decade. They've tried to minimize the connection, suggesting that Cole's actions were the result of mental instability rather than political radicalization. But the confession speaks for itself. Cole explicitly connected his actions to his belief that the election was stolen. He explicitly stated his disappointment that Trump lost. He explicitly embraced the conspiracy theories that Trump has been pushing for years. The uncomfortable truth that Trump's allies cannot escape is that their movement has created an environment where violence becomes thinkable for some people. When a leader tells his followers that the system is rigged, that the election was stolen, that drastic action is necessary to save the country, some of those followers will take those words seriously. Brian Cole is not an isolated case. He is a data point in a pattern that includes the January 6th rioters, the threats against election officials, the harassment of poll workers, and countless other acts of intimidation and violence that have been inspired by Trump's lies. And now, thanks to Trump's own FBI, we have definitive proof that this pattern extends to the pipe bombs as well. The irony of Trump's FBI solving this case is almost too perfect. Trump installed Kash Patel and Dan Bongino specifically because he wanted loyalists running the FBI. He wanted an FBI that would do his bidding and investigate his enemies. He wanted law enforcement that served his political interests. And his FBI solved a case that makes him look terrible. They caught the pipe bomber. And the pipe bomber turned out to be a MAGA true believer who acted on Trump's lies. The very competence that Trump's appointees demonstrated in cracking this cold case has produced evidence that undermines Trump's political narrative. If the FBI had never solved the case, Trump could have continued spinning conspiracy theories about who the bomber really was. But they solved it, and now Trump is stuck with the answer. This arrest has implications that go far beyond one criminal case. This is about the connection between political rhetoric and real-world violence. This is about the credibility of Trump's narrative around January 6th. And this is about what happens when an administration's own law enforcement success undermines its political messaging. Let me give you the key takeaways from everything we have covered. First and foremost, Trump's own FBI has proven that January 6th violence was inspired by his election lies. This is no longer a matter of interpretation or partisan spin, Brian Cole confessed. He told investigators he believed the 2020 election was stolen. He said he was disappointed Trump lost. He planted bombs motivated by those beliefs. Trump's own Justice Department obtained this confession. Trump's own FBI director oversaw the investigation. The evidence comes from within Trump's own administration, and that evidence proves what critics have been saying all along, that Trump's lies about the election radicalized people and inspired violence. You cannot dismiss this as a liberal media narrative when the source is Kash Patel's FBI. You cannot call it a Democratic hoax when Pam Bondi's Justice Department is prosecuting the case. Trump's own people have proven the connection between his rhetoric and domestic terrorism. Second, the conspiracy theories about the pipe bomber have been definitively debunked. For years, Trump supporters have speculated that the pipe bomber must have been Antifa or a false flag operative or anyone except one of their own. They have used the unsolved nature of the case to cast doubt on the entire January 6th narrative. They have suggested that the FBI was not really trying to solve the case because the answer would be embarrassing. Well, now we have the answer. And it is embarrassing, but not in the way they suggested. The pipe bomber was a pro-Trump supporter motivated by election fraud beliefs. He was exactly what Trump's critics suspected he would be. The conspiracy theories were wrong. The official narrative was right. And the evidence to prove it comes from Trump's own administration. Third, Trump cannot spin this the way he has spun other January 6th issues. Trump has been remarkably successful at rewriting the history of January 6th for his supporters. He has convinced many of them that the rioters were peaceful protesters. that the violence was exaggerated by the media, that the people being prosecuted are political prisoners who did nothing wrong. He has pardoned the rioters and called them patriots. But the pipe bombs are different. You cannot call someone who plants bombs a peaceful protester. You cannot pretend that functional explosive devices placed near buildings where people work are harmless. You cannot pardon Brian Cole and call him a patriot without explicitly endorsing domestic terrorism. The pipe bomb case puts a floor on how far Trump can go in minimizing January 6th. There are some facts that even he cannot spin away, and the confession of a pro-Trump bomb planter is one of them. Fourth, this is going to be a major issue in the upcoming midterm elections. Democrats have been looking for ways to make January 6th relevant again as an election issue. Trump's pardons and rhetoric have helped them, but the Cole arrest is even better from their perspective. This is not old news being rehashed. This is a fresh arrest with new information that confirms the connection between Trump's lies and real violence. Campaign ads practically write themselves. A Trump supporter planted bombs because he believed Trump's election lies. Trump's own FBI caught him. Trump's own Justice Department is prosecuting him. The suspect confessed and explained his motivations. This is a gift to Democrats trying to make the case that Trump is dangerous and that his movement has inspired domestic terrorism. And it is going to be in the news cycle from now until the elections. Fifth, the irony of Trump's FBI solving this case is extraordinary. Trump installed Kash Patel and Dan Bongino specifically because he wanted loyalists running the FBI. He wanted an FBI that would do his bidding and investigate his enemies. He wanted law enforcement that served his political interests. And his FBI solved a case that makes him look terrible. They caught the pipe bomber. And the pipe bomber turned out to be a MAGA true believer who acted on Trump's lies. The very competence that Trump's appointees demonstrated in cracking this cold case has produced evidence that undermines Trump's political narrative. If the FBI had never solved the case, Trump could have continued spinning conspiracy theories about who the bomber really was. But they solved it, and now Trump is stuck with the answer. Here is the bottom line. The FBI arrested Brian Cole, and he confessed to planting pipe bombs near the DNC and RNC headquarters on January 5th, 2021. He told investigators he was disappointed Trump lost the 2020 election. He expressed beliefs about election fraud. He was a pro-Trump supporter who acted on the stolen election narrative. Trump's own FBI under Kash Patel solved this case. Trump's own Justice Department is prosecuting it. And the evidence proves what critics have said all along, that Trump's lies about the election radicalized people and inspired violence. Trump is furious because his own administration has handed his opponents devastating evidence. The conspiracy theories about false flags and Antifa have been debunked by Trump's own FBI. The connection between Trump's rhetoric and domestic terrorism has been confirmed by a confession obtained under Trump's own Justice Department. There is no way to spin this that does not end badly for Trump. His movement inspired a bomb planter. His lies motivated violence. And his own law enforcement apparatus has proven it. The irony is almost poetic. Trump wanted an FBI that served his interests. He installed loyalists to run the bureau. He prioritized investigations that would make him look good. And then his FBI cracked a case that makes him look like the inspiration for domestic terrorism. Pam Bondi wanted to take a victory lap for solving a cold case. Instead, she has to explain why the suspect sounds exactly like a Trump rally attendee. The administration wanted credit for competent law enforcement. Instead, they have given Democrats the perfect exhibit for why Trump's rhetoric is dangerous. Brian Cole confessed. He explained his beliefs. He connected his actions to Trump's election lies. And there is no unseeing that confession. There is no unlearning what we now know. The pipe bomber was a Trump supporter motivated by Trump's conspiracy theories. Period. That is the finding of Trump's own FBI. That is the conclusion of Trump's own Justice Department. That is the truth that Trump cannot escape, no matter how furious he gets about it. January 6th was not a peaceful protest. It was an attack on American democracy that included pipe bombs planted by a Trump supporter who believed Trump's lies. And now, thanks to Trump's own administration, we have the proof. Trump can rage all he wants. His FBI solved the case. His Justice Department obtained the confession. And the confession ties the violence directly to his movement. There is no coming back from that. There is no conspiracy theory that can explain it away. There is no pardon that can make it acceptable. The pipe bomber was one of his own, and everyone knows it now. The implications for the upcoming elections and for the ongoing debates about January 6th accountability are enormous, and this story is far from over. As the case proceeds through the courts, more details will emerge, and the political fallout will continue to unfold. One thing is certain. The narrative around January 6th has been permanently changed by this arrest, and Trump's own administration is responsible for the change.